Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and today I have the enormous privilege and pleasure of bringing you at home the Citroen DS 21. I have longed to drive one of these ever since I sat in the passenger seat of my friend James Walsh's car, and I thought, blimey, this is a car that I cannot forget. And Eric had so generously lent me the keys to this before he puts it up for sale, and he said take it out, experience it and find out why I love Citroen DS's so much that I've bought two of them, hence why I think he's getting rid of this one. Now, this car has already stolen my heart just driving down today to get parked up. I didn't think I would fall in love with it quite as much as I have, so I'm going to try and do this as unbiased as possible. But today in the video, I'm going to be showing you around the outside, under the bonnet, inside the back, showing you all the space inside, because when this came to market in 1955, it was the best selling car of the 20th century. And in fact, it was the best selling car until Tesla came out. That's what knocked it off the top spot as the fastest new selling car. Do you know that when they brought these out and they showed it off at the Paris show in 1955, in the first hour they sold 700. And by the end of today's video, I think you're going to agree that this not only is one of the most beautiful cars ever made, and certainly one of the most beautiful of the 20th century, but it's one of the most memorable as well. So in today's video, I have the enormous pleasure of bringing you the Citroen DS. Citroen did something special in the 1950s, and that something special was bringing the DS to market after launching at the Paris Salon of 1955. Don't know why I pronounced it like that. It would just be Paris Salon, wouldn't it? Anyway, the car came into a world where there was simply nothing quite like it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the family car market in Britain had motors like the Austin A90, the Morris Oxford, and of course Ford's lineup of Zephyr, Zodiac and the Consul. Now, all of those looked reasonably respectable, and then this came to market and, well, it changed the game. It's unapologetically glamorous, it's traffic stopping, and it was named to be a play on the French word for goddess, and it came in and it smashed new car sales records, as I mentioned earlier. Now, bear in mind that the world was very different because it's very austere and it's money is just not there in a post-war world, and it seems almost unfathomable that despite all of this, hundreds of people bought one without even a test drive. Now, there had been a lot of murmurings, there being grainy pictures in magazines, rushed shots on the front of newspapers, and all of that had built a hype that really could not be satisfied. Now, the car comes in and it replaces the traction, which of course, if you know much about Citroen, was a big winner for them, even though it kind of maybe knocked them massively financially in the 30s when they'd made it. And bear in mind, Citroen were in a good place at this point. They'd done well off the 2CV, which had launched in 1948. They were backed by Michelin, and so brand confidence was at high, and they wanted to ensure that they kept their growing customer base and also enhanced it as well, because they need to keep making those sales. Now, whilst the Bertone styling was signed off by Citroen bigwigs without too much faff, there was the issue about the engine, which I talk about later on in the video. But essentially, this new fuel-injected flat-six engine that the company had been working on since 1950 just wasn't going to plan. Money was being thrown at problems like lack of power, chronic overheating, and it was just decided that instead of going for bust, they'd go back to a known unit. So with that, they go back to the 1911cc engine as used in the Traction Advance. Now, this is an engine, bear in mind, that had been designed in the mid-30s. However, a lot of work had gone into that, so let's not fully discount it. And that's sort of a sore spot for some people, because it was the development of the traction and the technology which went with it, which put the company essentially in the position of going bust, and that's why it was bailed out by Michelin in the mid-1930s. It also explains why they start designing everything around radial tyres, because of course Michelin provide those. Anyway, the engine decision might feel a step backwards to some, but many manufacturers were taking engines and using them for decades in various guises. You see BMC do it, you see Ford do it, and Citroen shouldn't be criticised for going for a safe, known option on this one. And if you're wondering on brake horsepower of the engine, it's 75 brake horsepower at 4,500 RPM. There are more engine options later on for these cars, and of course the moving headlights, but we'll cover this in a different video when we review a later DS at some point in the near future. Now, one of the most impressive things about the DS, of course, well, famous or infamous, is the hydraulic setup. Now, the setup is designed to power the suspension, the clutch, the transmission and the steering. So this ensures a completely smooth driving experience, both ride, handling, steering, the full works, and it makes the entire experience very pleasurable indeed, as you'll see when we go driving later on Yorkshire's potholed roads. Now, it was the first mass production car equipped with hydromatic suspension as well as disc brakes, which must have made it so otherworldly in a way that we just can't comprehend when we test things retrospectively. It is also worth mentioning this setup is absolutely unbelievable in how it works. It corrects ride height, it compensates with automatic self-leveling, which was something the company designed in-house. Now, I could do all sorts in video with this. However, Ian from Hubnut did an absolutely brilliant video of how it all works with the Citroen suspension and the self-leveling, and he drove a DS on 3 wheels, and you should go and look for that video after watching this one. Transmission on these at this point in time is either 4 or 5 speed manual, and until you get to the 1970s you aren't offered an automatic as an option, at least not in the UK brochures that I've seen anyway. It is worth mentioning the body too, because the car structure is great for restoration and repairs if you're looking at doing this. The car is essentially a skeletal design and the panels are bolt-on, which means that if you need to sort your car after an accident or remove something suspect, it's pretty straightforward. It's got a fiberglass polyester mixed roof and a lightweight aluminium bonnet, and again, all designed with performance and end finish in mind. However, a lot of Citroens are bolt on and off panels though, so it isn't unique to this model. It's something they keep going with. Aside from the design, the car had incredible racing prowess in the era. It won Monte Carlo in 1959 and 1966 and Thousand Lakes Rally in 1962, and there are countless other wins on a global circuit, and the car was revered by drivers all over the globe. However, I should mention that 1966 Monte Carlo win has been a bit of a sore point for some people, especially for Mini Cooper fans, because the only reason that the DS won the title instead of coming second was due to disqualification for the Cooper, and it was something really petty they got disqualified over, and I forget what it is. I think it's something like the headlights. They said, oh, they aren't quite right or they don't meet the spec. Anyway, it seems like splitting hairs just to make a point, but that's because the Mini Cooper had been wildly successful and people felt a little bit sore about it. Anyway, that's a whole other video, and there is so much history to the DS and we cannot cover it all here today, so we'll revisit some of that in a later video of the car. So we'll come back to visit the Citroen DS and we'll cover a later model so that we can talk about the evolution of the car and the history of it as well. The car production came to a close in 1975 and they'd sold just shy of 1.5 million of these across the world. It won places in the top 10 for being most beautiful, most innovative, most groundbreaking and most memorable car of the 20th century. But what is it actually like to experience as a driver? Well, come with me as we hop on in. Coming inside here, my goodness, isn't it just absolutely gorgeous? You're looking at it from the outside and it's unmistakably a DS. There is really nothing else like it. And you come inside here and you think, blimey, they've not let the side down inside either. Bertoni and the design team, bravo, it is exceptional. And one of the great things about this is even though it's a car that came to market in 1955, it is remarkably well equipped. Now this example, as I was telling you earlier, is a 1967 pre-facelift model. So if you look at one of the later cars from 1967 to the end of production, you will see a different front end and you'll see plenty of other changes. But I thought that today I wanted to show you an early one to show you where the journey began. And of course, with this one, because Eric's got two, this is his early one, he's got a late one as well, I thought I need to grab this before it sells. Now, coming inside here, I will issue a caveat that this is probably one of the best ones you will ever see, because it is benefited from a no expense spared nut and bolt restoration with a Citroen specialist. And it's one of those things that even though it has benefited from that restoration, you've still got the bare skeleton of what they put into the cars when it was new. And you can see that even if there was a down a heel example, you would still have so much to work with. So I'm going to show you what gauges, dials that we've got here. We've got a rev counter, we've got the fuel gauge, you've got your oil, you've got your temperature, you've got your speedo. Now, it's worth pointing out that we are in kilometres today, not miles per hour. So if you see me hitting the heady heights of 50 in a 30, that's because I'm actually doing 30 miles per hour. It's like one of the only conversions that I can remember because it's such a frequent one. Over on the right hand side there, you've got your clock as well, which is working. And we've got a selection of other bits and pieces. So let me show you. First of all, you've got your indicators. Now, I have noted that they aren't self-cancelling, so I'm having to cancel those as we go round. You've got your lights. And the best bit is you can turn this, right? And then it's this one, isn't it? And you can put it on so that when you park up in town, you just leave the side lights on. It's a bit of a French thing. You've got your wipers. And something that I absolutely adore on this is they are 2-speed, not single speed. It's one of my biggest criticisms of vehicles, older classic vehicles, is you only get a single speed wiper. On this, 2-speed. Can you imagine what it must have been like in 1955 for people in Great Britain to see pictures of these, and maybe even early examples, when this was in the family car market and it was coming up against, well, not coming up against, but in what have we got in the family car market at that time? We've got things like the A90 Westminster, you've got your Oxford, you've got a couple of offerings from Ford, you've got Consul, can't think what else we've got there. But those are really your dominant forces in that family car market. And then Citroen comes to market with this. People must have thought, what on earth is going on? Because this, of course, as I was telling you earlier, replaces the traction. And people must have thought, this is just like nothing else I've ever seen. Citroen really did know what they were doing, though. If you think about it, they brought up the traction. I mean, by 1955, they're on high. They've done the traction. They've done the 2CV. They bring this to market. Citroen are known for innovation for a reason. My goodness. So we've got all of that going on. Sorry, I've just went off on some sort of mad love letter to Citroen there. You've got your choke over here on your far left. On here, you've got your cigar lighter. Very stylishly designed. And then this is one of your adjusters. Now, I can't remember for the life of me, so I'm going to put a layover on there, tell you what that is. And then in terms of getting the car started, you've got your push start there. This up here, this little red thing here, that's your warning for your fluids, because of course your fluids, as I was telling you earlier, are responsible for so much in this car that you need to know if something's going wrong. And coming over from there, you've got an absolutely enormous glove box which extends right down into the engine bay. Lovely big size there. You've got an ashtray, and we have got a period stereo there as well. This is just one of my very favourite cars that I've taken out in so very long. And something that I really like on this, and that I think you will as well, is this single spoke steering wheel. Now, you do see this run through, I mean, you see it right through in things like the Citroen Visa as well. And did you know that even Proton loved it so much that when they were designing the steering wheel for the Proton Saga, they pinched this, they loved this so much, they kept it on. So they aren't just influencing themselves, they're influencing brands decades later with this beautiful styling. Oh my goodness. And as well as that, because you've got the single spoke, your visibility in all of this is the best it possibly can be. Now coming over from there, you've got your heater controls. Again, deliciously designed, beautiful, just everything about it is lovely. Big old pocket there to put all your maps in and your cigars or your cigarettes. All of those, you've got your door pockets as well. And something that I particularly like that I wanted to share with you was how you open the doors. So you've got this ginormous handle. And by the way, I should probably mention that everything feels really good quality, you know, in terms of your high traffic areas, so your lights, your indicators, your gear change, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. And another thing that I wanted to show you as well was when the glass is fully wound down in the door, and I just love the fact that there's not a thick old door top on it. Again, it's just this beautiful, delicate styling that makes this car stand out. It is exceptional. Now, I know that one of the big criticisms that you see from people sometimes is they say, well, if it was such a forward-thinking car, why did they carry the engine over from the traction? But here's the thing, right? Is Citroen, unlike so many other brands, learnt lessons, and they learnt them quickly, because the 1930s, when they designed the traction, they had gone bust. They had the buyout by Michelin, all the other stuff that went on, and it did the company a real disservice. They essentially spent way too much money on developing the traction, and they were keen not to repeat that. So they did a lot of investigation around the engines. They looked at various different options, they looked at different cooling, and they couldn't get it quite right. And they said, we could throw more good money after bad, or we could stick with the unit that we know and put it into this car and bring this car to market. And that's what they did. And personally, with the fact that you can get such a cracking top speed out of this, it cruises really well. It's, even though it's an engine designed in the 30s, it's still holding its own, and it carries the vehicle beautifully. I don't think it's to its detriment. And I think actually it shows real intelligent thinking by Citroen, saying, well, we're not going to bust ourselves again, we're going to bring this car to market and we'll improve it. So as you know, the story goes, they do change the engine later on in the production. Now, what does it sound like? Well, that 1.9 does sound good. Now I'm going to give it a little bit of pedal as we go. Oh, when we're out on the road, I think you're going to love it as much as I do. Now, the one thing I will say is, before we set off, is let me talk to you about the gear change. So it is column gear change on this. So I wonder if I can show you, just going up into first. That's first. Second. Now third, you need to double declutch into it. It is a little bit tricky to get into. And then fourth is, again, you need to be in motion to get into that. And then reverse is all the way down and across like that. So it's easy enough. Right, let's go on an adventure, but before we do, I need to show you this horn. Listen to this. I need little pigeon to move out my way. If I need a person, that's ridiculous and I love it. Right, perhaps if I selected a gear, we could go on an adventure. Now, I forgot to show you the handbrake. The handbrake is just down here, and it is really easy to change through the gears. I don't know, I thought I was going to take a lot more to get used to this, but it's been an absolute piece of cake. It's a lovely thing to drive. And part of that is the fact that your visibility is really good. So the seating position, you're nice and high, so you can see right to the end of the wing. And where you sit as the driver, you can see that front corner quite prominently, which means that everything feels like it gives you a really good grip of reality, because sometimes you get in cars and you can't blooming see anything and you think, oh, and you just have no connection to what's going on outside. Now, we are coming up to a wee bit of traffic, so what I might do is I might just catch up with you once we've pulled out of this junction. Again, I don't think I've ever driven a left hooker where I felt so confident so early on driving this. Also, I should probably mention the brakes are really keen on this. Much keener than I thought they'd be. See, I didn't catch it quite right there. So as I said, third gear is quite tricky to get hold of. So see if I can do it again. I was doing it fine earlier. There we go. Takes a little bit to get into, but again, it's more that you just have to learn the technique. I mean, it's the same with all old cars, isn't it? There's always something that you've got to master. Now, as we cruise along, my foot is barely touching the accelerator, and we're cruising along with very little stress. We're taking every bump in our stride with that suspension setup that I was talking about earlier, and it is just such a beautiful thing to drive. It doesn't feel like just a car, it feels so much more than that. It feels like an experience. Sorry that I'm a bit quiet, I'm really lost in the moment. It's one of the most beautiful driving experiences I've ever had the pleasure of driving. Now, what makes it beautiful? Well, the gear change takes a little bit of welly, but again, it's just about getting used to it as you go along. It's really not that bad at all. And in terms of everything else, well, the steering, as you can probably see, is super light and responsive, which is so nice. The roads around here are not the best, and yet the suspension is taking it all in its stride, which means that you just glide along like a swan on a pond, and it is utterly glorious. Because you've got that great visibility, you've got a really good sense of where you are in the road, so your road positioning is absolutely bang on early on in the game. And I think that anybody could master driving this, and that is one of the great joys about it. Because quite often with 50s vehicles, you have to be out in them for sometimes quite a while until you get your head into it. And it can feel a little bit off-putting for the era of the vehicle. But for this, not so. One thing I don't like about it is I wish that and this is such a small criticism, but it's a personal preference, is I don't like reaching through the steering wheel to use the window wipers. I wish that it was somewhere down here that I could reach just round the steering wheel as opposed to through it, because that's a control that I'm having to use quite regularly, and it just feels a bit strange to be reaching through the steering wheel. But again, it's probably one of those characteristics that you have become accustomed to as opposed to it becoming a detractor. In terms of wind noise, it's a little bit up here, but it's very, very quiet for the age of the vehicle. Because quite often you'll take stuff from this era out and you'll find that the wind noise is quite something. In terms of cruising along, again, we're really not having to stress it whatsoever to do our 30. And we just went down quite a considerable pothole. And I bet you at home didn't see the camera move, and you certainly didn't hear or feel it. Whereas there's some stuff that we take out and you can feel every nook and cranny in the road, and it can really ruin a test drive. Now, what would I change? Goodness me, I'd probably make them easier to work on. And that is something I will say, if you are watching this and you're thinking about taking one of these on, is I would say make sure you've established where your nearest decent garage is if you're not handy with these or au fait with them yourselves. And in fact, we should probably give a nod to the early adopters of these, because it was a wee bit of a problem in the early days. And it was something that was mentioned, is that not only did they struggle to meet that early demand, because I talked about them selling 700 in the first hour, they sold 12,000 in the first day, and yet it took them over a year to meet just that first day of orders. That's how slowly they were being produced. And at the same time, they were also slowly being adopted by mechanics. So because people had never really seen these before, the training wasn't really out there, and it was quite a thing for people to get their heads into. So I think that if you are looking to buy one of these, make sure you've established a nearby expert to help you out with anything you might struggle with. However, if you haven't owned one of these and you're thinking, oh, I don't know where to start, I don't know where I'm going to find a garage, can I just point you in the direction of the Citroen Car Club? Because we went to the Citroen Car Club rally last year, and I was blown away by how lovely people were. I'd never, outside of the Morris Minor Runner Club, I'd never really experienced that in such a large volume of people. Everyone we met was so very lovely. And number two, the skills, expertise and support in that club are absolutely marvellous. So if you are thinking about taking one of these on, you've never done it before, and you feel slightly deterred by my warning, don't be, because I am so certain that if you were to take one of these on, you could call up the Citroen Car Club and they would help you out. They are such a lovely bunch of people. Now, I'm being a little bit cautious pulling out. People take this roundabout like nutters. But it's a great time for me to show you how well it goes round a roundabout, eh? As we come round. And we come back off. It really is no trouble at all. It's lovely. And you probably saw there that I barely had to move the wheel to get it to follow the roundabout round. And again, it just aids that lovely, carefree driving experience coming out in this. And I'm sure you've seen that even as we've been on this test drive, that third gear is becoming more apparent to me as we go on. It's about technique, it really, really is. Now, as I said at the start of this video, this is for sale. I wouldn't sell this, I think it's great. And the seller's details are in the description box below. I've thoroughly enjoyed taking it out today. It has been a real marvel. I didn't think I would love it quite as much as I have. If I knew somebody, apart from Pete and Barry, who run the Citroen garage near Peterborough in Bourne, if I was a little bit closer to them, or perhaps I was a bit handier and au fait with Citroens myself, I would definitely take one of these on, because this has been one of the best driving experiences that I've ever had. I've loved every minute of it, from the sumptuous seats to how it's laid out to the finesse of the driving. Oh, everything about this is perfection on four wheels. It is glorious. So if you are watching this, you've got the money there, you've got the support, or you think that you'll be able to access it just fine, do it, do it, do it. You will not regret it. These are wonderful. And I know that perhaps people will say to me that I haven't been critical enough on it, but I haven't really found much to criticise about it, apart from finding it a wee bit tricky to find that third gear. Then I've done it again. Come back down in a second and we'll try it again. There we go. So apart from finding it a wee bit tricky to find that third gear, I'm reaching through for the wipers. There hasn't been much for me to complain about. And as many people will tell you close to me, I love a good complaint. So that's it from me today. I have loved every minute of this Citroen DS. Thank you so much, Eric, for letting me take it out. It has been a real experience, and they say don't meet your heroes, but I've met mine today and it hasn't disappointed me whatsoever. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Have you owned one yourself? Would you own one again? And until next time, when we're looking at something very different once again, take care and drive safely.